My name's Johnny Bear Contreras. I'm a member of the Sampasquaw Band of Indians. We're located in Valley Center, California. I'm a public artist. I've been a public artist, a professional since 1996. I'm also a community activist. I sit on the cultural committee for Sampasquaw as well. Journey as an artist, oh gosh, you know, that it's still still journeying, I guess you would say. That's been something that comes across my mind quite a bit. You know, looking at some of my first projects, some of my first creations. You know, starting with traditional stories, fragments of stories. I think most Native people out there, especially in San Diego, I would even go as far as saying throughout California, when they hear the word fragment, stories, and tradition, I think they could relate and connect to that. Because often the stories aren't told in whole or in a continued sense. And what I mean by that is sometimes those relatives that share those things with you, you know, it's not like like at school or in regular organizations, and where you come together at this time and this place to meet, and I'm going to tell you this story. It's happenstance. You know, there's a ceremony, there's a gathering, there's a passing, or you're just, you know, knocking a few back and relaxing, and somebody gets into telling you a story, and sometimes you can ask and you can kind of direct, but most of the time you're just sitting back and kind of trying to absorb what that is. And when I say that, so it's like often I would ask, I'm the youngest of 10 out of 5 boys, 5 girls. So I've come up asking, you know, what was going on with the family? How did we end up where we are? There are all these different particular facts, all these different things that point to what our current situation is. I mean, I was never that articulate. I just say, man, you know, how'd this situation come up? Well, let me tell you a story about your uncle. Let me tell you a story about your grandpa. Tell you a story about your grandma. So you start to put these things together. So early on, and I still reference myself as a storyteller. You know, I listened. You know, being the youngest of 10, sometimes you had to listen, right? You had to either read or you had to listen to your elders, right? Your brothers and sisters. So the journey has been just that. It's been a process, processing through the stories while new stories were forming. You find yourself in different positions in that story because our stories are ancient. They have their roots, their connections, you know, are connected to here in the levels of the dirt around us, you know, la tierra that's around us. That's what we're connected to. So that journey may have started, you know, millennia ago, but for me, I see myself at different points, and I've been fortunate enough to take these different aspects of my journey and celebrate them through sculpture, through you know, lino, 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional, even sitting here today. Is another place marker on my journey that I'm in today, and my art will reflect that. If you were to sit and look at the different locations and look at the different times that these pieces of work were done, you'll see that if you look deep enough, you'll see that they're reflective of the time that they were done. Cultural needs and challenges in my community. My community being Sampasquaw Reservation and some of the surrounding area. It's been, that in itself has been graduations. And what I mean by that is there's different times in where people seem to be well informed and understanding of what the conditions that surround them are. Be it political, be it, and on the reservation, there's no separating politics and culture and everyday going-ons. A lot of times I'll reference to the relatives I'll say our village mentality, and where we should be involved in different aspects and understanding who the people, your leaders, and the individuals that are going to be determining the culture in your village. And it's very much, in my opinion, it's very much a Western way of thinking to separate, bring these things apart. In a village mentality, these things are all together. You should be a statesman. You should understand your cultural representation. You should be involved in ceremony. You should be part of all these things that are going on. But that would probably be a more of a ideal place and situation. And all of that said, just to say what our challenges are, what my challenge is as a public artist, cultural representative, father, uncle, grandfather, a brother, is just that, being able to bring things into focus, trying through my art, through my involvement in other activities outside the reservation. For instance, we do a project with the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance, Safari, which is the safari park as well. We've created an annual event, Indigenous Day, which used to be Columbus Day. We have that Indigenous Day on that same time. That's reaching, some may say, well, that's reaching out of the hemisphere of your reservation influence. And I would say that where the safari park is, that's the indigenous ancestral land of the Kumeyaay, specifically our band. That's where our stories stem from. That's where our bones are literally still buried underneath that surface. So challenges, there again, and you'll probably hear me say this throughout this video, that I've been fortunate to be able to sit and talk with individuals that have been able to bring things to the table that can address the challenges. And the challenge being recognition as a people, as a culture, as an ancient culture that is still here today, contemporary, that we don't just live in between the pages of history and history's annuals, that we're active, thriving, contemporary people that should be met with that same set of values and conditions at the very onset when you deal with individuals from the reservation. So the challenge has been able to bring something like that to bear. So as a public artist, I think I've been fortunate because I've had the opportunity to be raised within that village mentality. I could see some of my nephews and nieces, which there are about 31, right, being the youngest of 10, they would be laughing right now if they heard me, because they'd be like, oh man, there's Bear putting it down, talking about these. But what these young souls may not have come across yet is that they'll be the bearers of this same thing in the decades to come, because they've accepted and they're involved in that village mentality. They find frustration in that not everybody has the same acceptance to move through this idea of being a village and taking care of one another, addressing the challenges, be it political, cultural, outside, inside the reservation. And that's what I mean, and that right there is, the challenge has been able to get the message across and accurately to all generations. The younger generations, of course, I think are always more apt to step to the challenge. Some of the older generations, I think they find difficulty in seeing new versions of something that they've been kind of force-fed, and that that colonized way, that European sense of seeing things in levels and separation, that you should be this, not that, that you can't be the combination of all these things. So there again, I think I've been fortunate with the relatives and the challenges that I've been able to bring things to fruition. I think to go in depth on that would be first to understand the communities that are here. As I was saying, you have quite a few bands of the Kumeyaay, and we have different structures, different infrastructures. So I think it's important not to just do like a quick surface analysis, a quick meeting or two, but to have individuals that would actually go out and or have Zoom, have not in-person meetings, even telephone calls if people do that anymore, and just really get to understand who the representatives are who are actually contending with some of the challenges, not only challenges, but that are also celebrating the culture and the different bands. And as I was saying earlier, not every band has the ability to have a great infrastructure. And I've referenced casinos. And not every casino supports every cultural aspect of the band. They may throw money at certain things, but then it comes up into the actual administration of that band to break it down and to look to participate. So if I were sitting in the office downtown and talking to some representatives of the arts and culture in San Diego, and they were asking specific, what could we do? I'd say, make contact. Find a few folks, get out and see that infrastructure, get out and see the people, see the area, understand who you're dealing with. Just don't take it at face value when our representatives show up and they're able to address things very specifically. They may not, they may not be connected to the culture as much as you would think. Many are. Many of our representatives have depth, but if you're looking to do something that's going to have longevity, that's going to actually address the different situations of the Kumeyaay people, it's important that you understand the individuals that you're communicating with. There's not a ton of folks running around that can address these specific things. For instance, we were talking about land tenure earlier. We were talking about San Pasqual specifically, that area. There are groups that are mindful of what the situation is, but they may not be the cultural representatives that the city would need to deal with. So if you don't know, then you will end up getting just, I don't want to say a facade, but you're going to get, you're going to get the storefront of what really exists. And now you're talking about, we're downtown, we're in the city building, and we're talking about what can we do, how can we make communications better. That takes time and money. It takes individuals to come out and deal with these, gather the information and engage. Of course, understand that. I may be a public artist, but I've been engaged in tribal government and culture, majority of my life since my early teens. And so it does take dedication of funds, time, and creating even yet another board or committee or subcommittee that would go and talk to these individual groups or groups that come together. For instance, this grant, which I'm a part of, Far South Border North grant, addresses some of these different dynamics. I've been fortunate enough to have had a relationship with Casa Familiar in the past, and my relationships even growing more. I'm down here, and they're probably getting a little tired to see me around all the time, but I'm taking hold of their dynamic, because I may have been involved in our infrastructure on San Pasqual since a teenager, but the way Casa Familiar applies it here in San Ysidro and what they do, the dynamics, it's so much better. And you could take note of that and their methodologies that they use to bring the community in. And so if I was sitting downtown and talking to different individuals, which I believe this is what we're addressing, would be to create more hubs and to have consistency with these hubs so that they have the ability to not only get information and contain it, but to bring it and bring it out to other groups and make it available so that other folks that don't have the ability to come to the meetings, be part of everything, there's an archive that you can address, see, and then if you're so inclined to be involved, that you can identify a representative. So in other words, I come from a small reservation up in the mountains. We don't even have great working Wi-Fi, but I heard there's a site that I can look at and see that there's communications with the County of San Diego and the City of San Diego, and where I can be involved. And we have a specific aspect of the culture in San Diego that we would like to bring to light. And the reason I say that is because I can think of specific individuals right now. They've lived in their culture day in, day out, but I also know they work quite hard, and it's almost impossible for them to come to a meeting. I've asked, and I don't like to put that hardship on someone for information gathering. But if there was somebody or some place that could do like what we're doing today, imagine that. You could have that communication. You could bring a resource that would otherwise go unseen and eventually maybe even dissipate. You know, so it comes to disseminate the information in a fashion that is going to work for everyone. The community that I'm representing today and what the city can do in specific projects, one is to have more hub meetings and where you're reaching out to the communities so the representatives can come and actually engage. If you're talking about, for instance, public artworks, I think that if you first had the meetings with the individuals that are informed, that are, I like the words cultural practitioners, that are truly cultural practitioners. If they're teamed with individuals that do the footwork, get the information, gather the information in such a way that it can be broken down and distributed, if those individuals are teamed together, then you could, in the end up with public artworks that have continuity, that actually represents something that is going to be long-lasting. Something that I've picked up on here, you know, it's always fascinates me when we have something in our mind that we know that's always been there, an idea, a way to go about something, but then somebody puts it or brings it out of you and puts it in just the simplest form, is something that I've come across here since working on the grant, working with Casa Familiar, is the approach. You know, what's your approach going to be for your work? How are you going to engage the community? And what do you see as a long-term return on this? You know, and if you stretch those things out, in between is that engagement in bringing things to fruition. So project, not to just generalize it, but public art projects, public works, things that identify the complexities of the culture that's been here since in time immemorial. There are so much resources that we can use and apply to, but it's the things in between. It's the programming, it's the individuals can not only identify the programming, but put the programming to work, that have the ability to create the outreach and to actually follow through with it and bring everything into one space. And there again, as to what I was saying earlier, have it to where you can reach in and contribute or pull out and bring it into your own community. Specific projects is to what projects already exist, to let's shore them up with a little more cultural depth, whether it be our parks, our public spaces, architectural add-ons in various construction going on throughout San Diego, which, you know, you think of the trolley, you think of the trolley stations, you think of all the bridges, you think of all these metal architectural add-ons and so on and so forth, to bring the culture through these particular initiatives, create the initiative, bring it through to fruition. It means building the artist as well, to have something to where artists can, and I mean cultural practitioners, storytellers, to where they can go in a hub to where they can actually participate and see, you know, I love that saying, you know, the fruits of their labor. First, I don't have my finger on every aspect. Fortunately, I've been down here like with Casa Familiar and some of the other organizations, and I'm getting exposed to what some of these dynamics that have existed and new dynamics are being uncovered. It's a golden era. I think in San Diego, we're fortunate that I think we have the policymakers that do support the initiatives that are created and that reach out to the creatives. Love that word, the creatives. You know, it's an ancient reference in that individuals have always been recognized for the ability to bring different things together and create. They're the doers, the thinkers, and the processors, right? So the culture here right now is we can reach in, tap some of these resources while there's a rhythm, while there's movement, while there's energy. And if you can't take, and let's just talk about one particular neighborhood, and you know there's a synergy going on because of one activism or a creation of another. Being able to somehow record that, put that in some kind of accessible content, then it means you could come back to it and use it at another time. You could create an archive of references and have a plan, an overall plan that this is going to be your cultural arts program. This is going to be the direction that we're going in, to paint these pictures, but you're going to have the pictures. It's just going to be a matter of process. But if you don't take the time now to put the money into the programs, because money represents energy and individuals that can bring these things together. But if you don't put the funds, create the legislation, find the contributors, work with the groups that can create these funds, that can go out and identify the resources and bring things in, the time may slip by. And I say that in the most respectful way that I can, that things have a tendency to move, and if you don't act on them, if you don't relish it, and I guess if you relish it, you're going to act on it, right? So to be specific about it, it's, you know, that good old saying, you know, put your money where your mouth is. So we were talking about having liaisons to the communities. Not the same people in the same meetings every time. And I was saying that often when we go to these particular meetings, we'll have some of, and it's great. The individuals have great ideas, but we're not the catch-all. Because I come from a Native community doesn't mean I know what's going on in every other Native community. So we need to reach to the next generations, especially the younger generations that are culturally connected or not yet culturally connected, because they're interfacing already. Social media is a great tool for tying all these different events together. So when we can use that and adapt that, you know, they should be present at the city meeting, that same meeting sitting downtown. They should be there on a laptop. They should have a virtual presence. You know, what does it take to create that? Because being a liaison, being connected, but being contemporary, because if we don't reach our next generations, they're going to be reaching someplace else or not reaching at all. So that connection is something that's essential. And we can't be the catch-all for all things. We know our communities, and we need to bring individuals in from all the surrounding communities as well.